From Liberty Steel reopening next month to the very latest on a new hotel proposed on Front Street in Georgetown, I speak exclusively with Georgetown Mayor Brendon Barber Sr. for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Georgetown Mayor Brendon Barber Sr., welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Well, good to be with you, Quintin. And, this is a great day, man. Every day above ground is great. So this is the day the Lord has set. Let us all rejoice and be glad in it, like the old folks would say.
Yes, it is true. Thank God and Jesus for that. Well, let me just jump into some developing news, Mayor. Liberty Steel, as you know, was once one of Georgetown's largest employers, and recently they announced that they will resume operations next month after being closed for some time. Let me ask you this, Mayor. Is Liberty Steel in the future for Georgetown?
Well, I can't answer that because I'm not in their headquarters. All I know that with Georgetown, we, and of course, I'm terming out. I lost my election, so I'm terming out as mayor as the end of this month. So that's going to be something that the new administration is going to have to work with, and in conjunction with that property. The property is still private property, but after a certain period of time, due to a time clock, it goes in, the red, which is the redevelopment zone for that property takes place. So really, the conversation now, since they just made that announcement, that's going to be something that the new administration is going to have to look at and work with Liberty and also the community to see how that property is going to be used. So, what Liberty's going to actually do if they're reopening, I don't know the extent of everything that they're doing, but I know they did mention the rolling mill. They didn't mention any other parts. So you just have to look at it that way. I'll be involved in some other things that's non-city related, but, moving forward with nonprofit that I work for, and just moving from that side is still serving the community, man.
Yeah, let me ask you, with Liberty Steel, what will be processing at Liberty Steel and what will be actually production?
Now, Quintin, I'm going to tell you again. All I know is from what you've read and everything else. Okay, it's the rolling mill, so that's all I can comment on.
Okay.
Whatever they're going to do at the rolling mill, I'm not a steel person, but what they made indication in their release was that they would be operating the rolling. All right, so we'll have to have further conversations with them. But my conversation as mayor will end after this month.
Right.
In other words, to give you more information. All right.
Let me ask you from a health perspective, how does the city hope that the mill will be a good corporate neighbor and prevent the airborne pollution like it was in the past?
Well, when you start talking about pollution, it's not only the mill, but what other, things that we have that impact the air quality around Georgetown. They're not the only industry that's in Georgetown. So when you start talking about, pollution and what have you, that's something we'd have to make sure that we're in alignment with DHEC and EPA and everyone else. I don't think the rolling mill, from what I understand, I don't think they create that much of a impact on the environment, but I'm not in that area to answer that at that time because I don't know all the details.
Now, how is the city currently attracting an industry that can provide more stability for the city?
Well, you already have Eagle Commerce Park, which was part of the old electric, and of course, Green Core Manufacturing has already completed that process over there with rehabbing, and it's a brand new facility that they've rehabbed. And they're also going to build 2 new spec buildings. And see, that's light industry, and that's the type of industry we're attracting to Georgetown now. So you're talking about your first, second, and third tier suppliers coming in from the Tri-County area, which is the Charleston, Berkeley, Dorchester area, where cost of doing business here would be a lot cheaper than doing business in the Tri-County area where you're located at this time.
What are the largest non-manufacturing employers in Georgetown?
Pardon me? Well, that would be your school district, of course, and your local government. when you say non-industrial businesses.
Now, what are the national trends for retail and commercial development?
Well, if you start looking at national trends, you have to also talk about your supply chain. And not only that, you have to talk about your workforce and your manpower. As you know, across this country, it's hard to get a labor force together to be productive. That's why our supply chain has decreased, because we're not able to get a lot of the products that we need, not only here in the Georgetown community, but across the state and across the nation and globally. I mean, if you look outside, if you look over your harbor and look out there in the ocean, you'll see how many container ships are anchored out in the ocean waiting to get just into the Charleston community.
Yes, sir.
So I mean, this is this issue. Come on now, this issue has become a global issue as far as the supply chain. I mean, things just go into the supermarket and you will see items that it's hard to find. And this is a simple item. I went to a coffee shop yesterday just to order coffee, and they can't even find lids to secure their coffee cups. So you walk out with a coffee cup that's unsecure and doesn't have a lid to go on. Then if you look across the communities, there are stores, retail, and what have you, restaurants, that they're not even open 7 days a week anymore. That's due to manpower.
Yeah.
But there's a lot going on, Quintin, that it's not everything nationally. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas. Everything globally and nationally is being impacted by not only the supply chain, but also a viable workforce.
How do you assure, Mayor, that the Georgetown is in a position to benefit from opportunities associated with the regional economy?
Well, when you still, our port of entry, Charleston, is valuable not only to Georgetown and the state when it comes to supplies, but it goes back down to we have a different way. When I say we, the workforce now and production and everything else, we have during this pandemic, people have viewed, I think, from just a personal health standpoint, they're looking at how can they better themselves without going back to actual, being enclosed in four walls, but being more of a mobile workforce than a workforce that's just within, the old traditional way of being actually there in the factory. I mean, there are all kind of studies out there now being researched, from universities to even corporate America, trying to figure out how we can get a viable workforce that's going to be sustainable, not one that's going to be temporary. Okay?
When should the Georgetown port be restored?
Well, before the Georgetown port can be restored, it has to be dredged first.
Right.
When that man-made cut was put in there by the Army Corps of Engineers back in the 40s, what they did, the inner harbor itself was actually compromised because the silt would build up. The silt would build up in the inner harbor, right, because the main river, which is the Sanford River, kept a constant flow. So as that kept a constant flow, it created, of course, water's going to make a way, the path, release resistance. So right now the Sanford River is flowing, so that's on our state port dock side. That's maintaining the depth that we need on that side. But the problem is the inner harbor. So locally, with the county, we still have funding there for dredging and revitalizing the inner harbor, but also a partnership with the county and also Coastal Carolina, Dr. Till Hennenbrook.
Yes.
He's doing a study, the second phase of the study to how to revitalize not only the inner harbor, but also not to compromise, the Sanford River.
Now, what are the sedimation rates right now, as you know it?
Well, that's something that comes from the scientists. I know right now at some points you only have a foot of water that you need. Of course, there are some companies out there, some what we call barge companies that can plow through all that stuff. But the main key is if you're going to do the inner harbor and you want to increase depth, it's going to take scientists and engineers to do that. All right. So it makes no sense to dredge the inner harbor and you don't have the engineering and scientific, what we would call structures to come in and keep that flow going. Because if you just went in and dredge right now, within 24 to 36 months, there's going to be more buildup in the harbor. So you got to find a way to agitate silt to get it back out to the main current so it can go on out to the bay and to the ocean.
Now, will the slip be completely up from the original water depth of maybe 20 feet to 1 foot?
No, come back again and clarify that.
Yes, sir. Do you believe within 2 or 3 years that it will be completely split up from the original water depth of maybe 20 feet?
I think, we're blessed to have shrimpers and fishermen, and they create that agitation. So as the boats and fishing boats go out, they still agitate a lot of that silt. So that's helping, to keep that inner harbor at least accessible to recreational boating and also commercial fishing and shrimping. But the thing is, according to the scientist, which is Dr. Till Henenbooth, he's in the second phase of his study, but he also indicated he's going to need a third phase because in the second phase, they're going to create a working model to answer those questions that you're asking at this time on, how to agitate and get rid of that silt, but at the same time, have something that's going to be sustainable so we can create a viable waterway through the inner harbor.
Speaking of working, how should the waterfront be a working waterfront in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, that could be a combination of things, retail, residential, educational, and also some type of industry, which is comparable to what you would have on the East Coast. I mean, if you look at, you look at Baltimore Harbor and what have you, it's a working inner city harbor. That's a working waterfront. But, Georgetown's primed in a prime position to have a workable waterfront that includes, every facet of economic development you can think of.
Where would mixed-use urban centers fit in the city of Georgetown?
Well, I think it fits well. Being an old urban development guy, I think that fits in well because you have the environment where you can make that work.
Yes, sir. Is a smaller scale commercial development more ideal for your city?
Pardon me?
Is a smaller scale commercial development more ideal for Georgetown?
Well, it depends on your assessment from a development standpoint, which would be doable or which would be a better fit for Georgetown. It could be smaller, and it depends on what type of commercial development. All those things. When you start talking about commercial development, whether it's some type of industry or anything else, those are things that you have to look at what's available as far as land use. Then from there, find out what's going to be viable and sustainable economically. I mean, you just don't put things up unless you do your due diligence. Like every other large corporation, you have to make sure you have what's going to work, and not only what's going to work just for the short term, but the long term. What's going to be viable 20, 30, 40 years from now.
Who are you recruiting to Georgetown right now?
Well, right now, Georgetown's just open for business, and like I said, we've recruited and already have in place a light industry, and from there, that's an incubator to recruit more light industry. And then on the other hand, residential density. We've created a TIF district here in Georgetown, and that's a tax incremental financing district. So that creates more revenue. That's generating revenue that we never had before. So that's a new source of revenue. But see, when folks start talking about economic development, you got to have places for people to stay also. If you don't create any density, residential density, and folks who are coming in to develop, they're going to look at also whether it's the commercial side or whatever other type of development. So right now we have a couple of multifamily units that's going up. We already have a 55 and older completed, and then we have a 128 unit that's under construction here in Georgetown. And then we have some single family developments that are going up. Our building permits have gone up tremendously in the past, 3 years. The other thing that people don't realize are your actual numbers based on your census. Your census reporting for 2020, we have people fill out the census that should have, because our percentage rate here in the city and the county was only 48%, whereas in 2010 we had over 60+% of folks fill out the census. Now that's going to impact you too, because it really doesn't give you the projection of your actual numbers. So when you start talking about federal funding and folks looking at Georgetown and the county, if they're just basing it on the census, they're going to see a decrease where it really actually is not a decrease. But that's not only us. I believe that's in other areas of the state and country too, due to the pandemic.
Now, how will Georgetown support the efforts to improve connectivity in the region?
To improve what?
Connectivity.
Okay, I'm outside right now, Quintin, so you're going to have to speak up.
Okay. Yeah, how will Georgetown support the efforts to improve the connectivity in the region?
Well, I think what you do, man, is you just make sure you have all your structure and everything in place so that can move along. And, one thing that's going to be important for this entire region, the whole low country region, is to make sure you have the necessary infrastructure in place so that you can improve and also attract, development and everything here within the area. Infrastructure is going to be very important, and that's going to be up and down this coastline and also inland.
Well, speaking of structure, Mayor, will the city have to eventually build a parking garage for people who need to park on Front Street?
Well, I think that's something you'd have to look at in the future. Right now, that would have to either be a private development or a private-public partnership. Because for the city to do it alone, we're not in a financial position just to build a parking garage. That's something that would actually have to come from a private developer or, like I said, a private-public partnership.
And let me stay right there, because there are plans for a hotel to be built at the current location of the Georgetown Times, according to the GAB News. It has been approved by the city's Architecture Review Board. It's designed to be a 56-room boutique hotel with a rooftop deck and a restaurant that will be called the George Hotel. The hotel also will have around 80 spaces for guests as far as parking. Where are those 80 spaces going to be located?
Well, when you look at that's the old Georgetown Times building, but let me tell you this right here at this time. Probably from the developer standpoint, a lot of things haven't been finalized. They just purchased the 2021. Okay. The other thing is, I'm pretty sure there might be modifications to their plans. City has done what we've fulfilled our commitment 100%, doing our due diligence and everything we needed to do from an infrastructure standpoint. So as far as the city's concerned, we've done our part. Now it's up to the developers to move forward and with their project, which is the hotel.
Now, with those 80 spaces for parking, will they have to build up and not out?
The only way they can do is build up. They can't build out. Okay.
Yes, sir. If it was like 80 spaces for parking, why didn't they have a 70-room hotel?
I can't. That's developers that, like I said, I'm pretty sure those plans are going to be modified at this time. Okay, so I don't have the answer for that. That's something you'd have to ask the developers when they submit their plans again. Okay, because what you're making reference, I believe, is a couple of the things that occurred maybe a year ago, or maybe even 2 years ago. I think those things are going to be modified, but I can't speak for the developers.
Yes, sir. Let me turn back to you. Obviously, you're leaving office at the end of this month. What happened?
What happened? Folks didn't come out to vote. Not on our end. So the whole slate got clean. But anyway, man, I'm like this right here. I don't look in the rearview mirror. I just move forward.
Did you work hard enough?
Pardon me? I
Did
think everybody worked hard enough. Door to door. We worked hard enough. We went door to door personally.
Do you believe the city residents were basically tired, Mayor, of you making your own decisions without council?
I never made my own decisions. If you look at a vote, it takes a majority of council to make those decisions to move the city forward. That's the budget and everything else. So I think you're taking false facts, because the mayor can't make decisions individually. When it comes to policy and budget, that requires a majority vote of council.
Let me ask you this. What's something that you had an idea for 4 years ago that you want the new mayor to accomplish?
Pardon me?
What's that?
Hey, that's on the new mayor. That's not on me. So let's move forward.
How do you hope the city will move forward in the next 4 to 5 years?
Yeah, that's under the new administration. It doesn't have anything to do with me. Moving forward, that'll be under the new administration.
And when you look back at your administration from 4 years ago to right now, what is the biggest difference?
Oh man, look, you got a TIF district that's coming in that's going to create new revenue. You have additional housing, which we talked about. We got a cleaner Georgetown. We've done so many things that we've accomplished here on this end that I'm very proud of. All right, so we're in a better position. We've laid the foundation to further Georgetown with development, and we made Georgetown. We've put Georgetown on the map for the past 4 years. USA Today confirms that.
And what position are you in when it comes to water in Georgetown?
When you talk about water, are you talking drinking water, waste, storm water?
Yes, sir, all of that.
What
yes,
type
sir.
of water are you talking about?
Yes, all of that. Yes, sir.
Well, if you look at what we've done in the past 4 years, we've improved those particular utilities through infrastructure. I always tell people you can't build on old infrastructure. You have to make sure you have the new infrastructure in place. And so in the past 3.5 or 4 years, we spent over $22 million just with water utilities. So that's a big push for a small city like ours with a $30+ million budget, because and those things have helped all the communities in Georgetown. Even on the West End, out of that $22 million, we spent over $6 million just on the West End. So there are a lot of things that we've accomplished. Even the networking throughout the state and the federal government, which prior to that, those relationships were, I'll just put it this way: those relationships were severed. When I became mayor, we reestablished those relationships with our federal delegation, our governor, and everyone else. So I've got a lot to be proud of, man, and move forward. But that's just the state of this country at this time. I can tell you this right here: we've always done things in a fair way, and it's tough to make decisions, man. You got to make decisions, stand with it. If you just go along to get along, then don't become a leader.
Georgetown Mayor Brendon Barber Sr., thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
All right. Hey, Quintin, give me a call when you get a chance. All right?
Thank you.
Probably get together.
Sure, okay.
Don't sever the relationship now. All right. Okay.